This is FIDE Master Vedant Goswami. Today, I'm going to share a game which I recently played with one of my students. And I was white in a Rui Lopez game. So I thought it could be an example of, a basic plan in Rui Lopez. And what was my thinking during the game? What are the basic mistakes my student made, who is around 12 to 1300 FIDE. And this would be a good starting point to start understanding some Rui Lopez basics. So let us start. So the game goes e4, e5, and a3, and c6. Bishop b5, which is the beginning of the Rui Lopez system. a6, bishop a4. If I take bishop c6, that would be the Rui Lopez exchange. That is another topic. And f6 and d3. Now, here castle is also possible. And if white does castle, he did not need to worry about the loss of the pawn on e4 because the rook comes to e1. So let us say, I'll change this to an analysis board, just a second. Yeah, so let us say, if I castle, I don't need to worry about knight e4 because if rook e1 comes, knight has to go back and I recover the pawn with some advantage because the black king is still in the center while my rook has come on the same line. A little dangerous situation for white if he is not careful. So for example, let us say bishop d6 or something careless would lose to nc6 immediately because it is a discovered check and you lose the queen also. So the game went, in the game I played d3, which is also a popular variation, kind of a variation which you play to avoid mainline theory and allows white to develop at his own pace and also tests opponent's understanding of the opening. So b5, bishop b3, bishop c5. Now bishop c5 is always a bit risky because white always has the c3 and d4 hitting the bishop while gaining a tempo. It can lead to very dangerous situations. For example, let us say castles, and black plays, let us say h6, c3, castles, and d4. Okay, so if this happens and the white has a simple pawn roller, which can just push aside everything, and white already has a huge advantage, I can, simply develop, and it will be difficult for black to have a reasonable game. So this can happen, and that's why bishop c5 is risky and has to be dealt with care. So bishop e7 is the main move, which leads to pure Rui Lopez kind of system. So black played bishop c5, c3, d6, which is a good move. It supports the pawn on e5, knight d2. So I start the basic Rui Lopez maneuver. The knight goes to f1 and g3, supporting the pawn on e4. And at some point, white is ready to play d4. So castles, castles, bishop g4. Now, already this is kind of an inaccuracy because in Rui Lopez positions, the bishop, the light squared bishop for black is a very, very important piece. And if it is exchanged, most of the time it should be for this bishop. It should not be exchanged for a knight. It can be very dangerous. And if you see, why it is important, because the central pawns of black are on the dark squares. So which leaves light squares a bit weak. So that piece, this bishop is required to defend the central white squares. And also this for white is a very powerful piece, casting its range on a very long diagonal and attacking f7, creating a pin, and can be a very powerful piece. It has to be challenged, and the only black piece which can do is the bishop. And so it should be exchanged only for the bishop, bishop for the bishop, particularly in this position. So I played h3, bishop h5, rook e1, rook e8, and f1, very typical Spanish maneuver, d5 and ng3. So white has completed its plan, and black plays bishop into f3, queen into f3. Bishop f2, f3, I think, is kind of a losing mistake, though it looks like it does not lose material. But in Ruy Lopez type of positions, this can already be a losing mistakes, because now there is no counter for this bishop. There's no one challenging this bishop. Okay, so yeah, the move na5 can be indicated, and also after knight a5, bishop c2, it is to be noted that you have to be careful because b4 is a fork. Okay, so this position I'm showing on leeches, so all these arrows and all. So let us see. Queen f3. Now, in my eye, this position is totally winning for white, because I'll be able to develop an attack on the king side, and without being challenged by anything. And maybe if I get an opportunity, I'll play a3 also, so that, you know, at some point when the knight comes, I can retreat the bishop here and let it be on the dangerous long diagonal. Wrong arrow. Yeah, this one. Okay, so black played here d into e4 again, which is a blunder. Now the position is clearly winning. In many ways, knight can take it, but knowing my student, and you know, I wanted to finish the game with a direct attack instead of, you know, just some piece advantage. I take with this, and white has very simple ideas with nf5 and attacking on the king side. Okay, so h6 and knight f5. This is very simple, very thematic, and again, this knight here on f5 is mostly a very, very powerful piece, and in conjunction with the queen can almost be difficult to handle. And as we see, black is, the computer already suggesting giving up the exchange, so the position is so critical, and giving up material is so difficult for beginners. So though this is an idea, but to actually do it on the board would be really, really difficult. So black played b4, continuing his plan, and as beginners, they basically hope that opponent will do whatever you want, and he's hoping for, you know, some this, so that the knight can come to d4 and there's some counter play, or at least the knight on f5 can be exchanged. So I played bishop into h6, and it is quite simple. It is winning right away, because after gh6, queen g3, it is simple checkmate. Okay, so very typical example of a Ruy Lopez gone bad for black, where you don't have the light squared bishop, and the white's light squared bishop becomes a monster. And even otherwise, we see the power of the very typical knight maneuver, the Spanish maneuver, knight heads to f5, and in conjunction with the queen can be a very powerful attacking piece. So I hope you found this basic example of Ruy Lopez interesting, with a small bit of what things to do and what things to avoid. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you so much. Bye.